Welcome to Torah Reflections, a devotional from Feeding Hope Fellowship proclaiming the light of the Torah throughout the Bible. Today's title is God's Joy is My Strength, and we'll be reading from Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 7 through 11. Verse 7. We have acted very corruptly against you, and have not guarded the commands, nor the laws, nor the right rulings which you commanded your servant Moshe. Please remember the word that you commanded your servant Moshe, saying, If you trespass, I shall scatter you among the peoples. But if you shall turn back to me, and guard my commands, and do them, though you were cast out to the end of the heavens, I shall gather them from there, and bring them to the place which I have chosen, to make my name dwell there. And they are your servants and your people, whom you have ransomed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Yehovah, I pray, please let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant, and to the prayer of your servants who delight to fear your name, and let your servant prosper this day. I pray, and grant him compassion in the presence of this man, for I was cupbearer to the sovereign. Now, the story of Ezra and Nehemiah is one that's riddled with success and failure over and over again. The interesting thing about it is it doesn't really seem to have a satisfactory ending. And I think that is probably because the story, as far as I can tell, is not yet complete. You see, Nehemiah's prayer is actually very far-reaching and prophetic. He reminds God of his promise to Moshe in verse 8, saying, and I'm paraphrasing, If you trespass, I shall scatter you, but if you return to me, guard my commands, and do them. That's three things right there. Return to me, guard my commands, and do them. I will gather them from wherever and bring them back to the promised land. Again, that's a paraphrase. Do you realize that right now, over the last few years, there has been a huge awakening going on throughout the world? Despite whatever it is that's being taught in most churches today about God's law and it being done away with or not for today, people are actually being quickened by the Holy Spirit, and they're returning to His laws. See, that's exactly what we are told in the Bible that the Holy Spirit will do, is He will turn you and guide you back into the ways of righteousness. The ways of righteousness are God's laws. People are learning Torah, which is God's instructions, the first 5 books of the Bible, actually. And they're not doing this for their salvation. It's just because of their salvation. Because Jesus, his Hebrew name is Yeshua, He said, If you love me, you will keep my commands. And in that same chapter, He goes on to say, and if you keep my commands, my Father in heaven will love you back. Will love you back. These people are learning all of this, and they're guarding His Sabbaths, and they're keeping His feast days the way He asked us to do. This is the form in which He would like for us to worship Him, by continuing and keeping His Sabbaths and His feast days. And I have to say, I think it's exciting because this is what has to happen just before His return. This returning to Torah is what gives Him joy. Let me read to you Nehemiah chapter 8, verses 9 and 10. And it says, And Nehemiah, who was the governor, and Ezra the priest, the scribe, and the Levites, who taught the people, said to all the people, This day is set apart, meaning it's holy. This day is set apart to Yehovah your Elohim. Do not mourn or weep, for all the people wept when they heard the words of the Torah. When they heard God's law, when they heard it read to them, they began to weep. Then he said to them, "Go, eat the fat, drink the sweet, and send portions to those for whom none is prepared, for this day is set apart to our Yehovah, to our God. Do not be sad, for the joy of Yehovah is your strength." Wow. Did you hear that? Israel cried, and you are Israel. You are grafted in to Israel. But Israel cried when they heard the words of the Torah, when they heard the words of God's law. They cried. They desired to return to His ways and learn His commands, and this is what gave Him joy. And just like a father's joy over his child's first steps, you know how that strengthens and encourages the child to quickly go from walking to running. I know you've seen it. If you've had kids yourself, you've taught them how to walk, and you stand them up against the wall, and they take those first few steps. And when they take those first few steps, that very first time, you just about jump out of your skin for joy, and the smile, because that child sees your joy. His face just brightens up because he knows he's done something that he's never done before, and he's made mom and dad happy. And that joy that you have as a parent has now become his strength, and it is what carries him from those first feeble steps walking into those confident steps that he takes as he learns to run. This is how it is with God. When we decide to learn His commands and apply our lives to them, it gives Him joy, and that joy strengthens us to grow in Him. God's joy is my strength. I hope this encourages you. I hope this helps you to understand the importance and the relevance of the Torah, of God's law in our lives today. And remember, it's not about your salvation, but it's because of your salvation. Be blessed. I want to thank you for joining us today as we dive into the Torah for our first recording from Feeding Hope Fellowship. And I want to encourage you, if you are in the Leesville, Louisiana area on Shabbat, on Saturday, and you need a place to fellowship, we are a place that you can fellowship. We're open to the public, and the only thing is you'll have to call this number. You might want to write it down. It is area code 337-789-7925. And that is my phone number, and I will give you directions and times when the fellowship starts. Now, here's what we do at our fellowship. We do the Torah portion each week, and we have an open discussion after we read the Torah portion. And after we have our open discussion, we go into, we have a dining facility, and we break bread together. After that, we come back and we may have a teaching, or we may just hang out and fellowship with one another for the rest of the day. Because really all it's about is learning how to live in community with one another, because that's what we're preparing to do in the coming millennial kingdom. So we'd love to meet you. We'd love to spend some time with you. If you are in the area, if you live here in the area, give us a call. We worship on the Sabbath, on God's Sabbath. And yeah, just come be a part of us. We appreciate you. We love you. Have a good one.